Vanessa Fisk and Matt Heather kind of argument at the top of the episode didn't used to be intercut the way that it is now, but it felt like there were so many different parallels between the two couples, and it was kind of like this final moment of like connecting both of their story arcs. The first time Matt feels that Fisk is over there kind of making shady deals on the other side of the room. We also know that Matt is like unhinged at this point because they're both tense moments. That episode is maybe one of my favorite episodes of TV I've ever cut.
Hi, I'm Jamie Hitchings of Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify their skill set. You can learn more on filmmakeru.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on our YouTube channel. Every week we interview a film professional, and this week we are joined by Stephanie Filo, ACE, whose work includes History of the World Part 2, a Black Lady sketch show, and Daredevil, Born Again. Thank you so much for joining us this week, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
So Matt Murdoch, he's got this dual identity. He's Daredevil and he's also, a lawyer. How how did you edit the scenes where you were showcasing different parts of his identity?
I think something that you see a lot in the series is we kind of intercut him and Fisk because I think they're both grappling with like I guess just kind of coming to terms with their nature in a way, you know? So by the time we get to episode like 8 and 9, it's like Matt is fully on tilt. He's like become the Matt that we all are accustomed to, but he's also, just like angry as well. And so it was kind of just a matter of like trying to build that throughout the season. So it's like each episode, I think we kind of like upped it a little bit, like where Matt's perspective was. I know by like episode 4, which is where he first sees Frank the Punisher in his lair. So like that those kinds of moments we tried to kind of amplify, where we're like, okay, here's the moment where he's about to kind of have this really important realization, I guess, about the things that he's feeling. And then by the end of that episode, we were kind of intercutting between him and Fisk. So Fisk is walking down into the sorry, spoilers. He's walking down into the dungeon where we're revealed that Fisk has been holding Adam, Vanessa's lover this whole time, and then simultaneously Matt's going to his tool shed up on the roof to play with his billy clubs. So it's like they always had this in them, and so it was just a matter of like playing with what that dynamic was and how it kind of built throughout the season.
I am Chad Anderson with Manhattan Edit Workshop, and I am thrilled to introduce you to an introduction to Avid Media Composer. We'll cover all the basics from setting up the software and importing footage to editing, trimming, effects, audio, titles, media management, and everything in between. You'll have access to over 7 hours of self-paced lessons delivered in easy-to-understand segments, all with professional footage that you can download to work along with. And when you're finished with the course, you can use it to keep working or edit something of your own. We're also happy to offer live online office hours that anyone can schedule with me, so we can work out a tricky problem, review concepts, or even have a creative session to evaluate your edit. MuseShop's online introduction to Avid Media Composer is the perfect way to get a hands-on, in-person training experience in a self-paced, on-demand package. I'm Chad Anderson, and I can't wait to help you master Avid Media Composer.
So this is set a few years into the future, but I found that it really maintains kind of a visual cohesiveness from the first deluge into the series. And were there motifs or rhythms that you borrowed from the original series and placed into Born Again?
Yeah, we had an interesting journey on this project because there were two different kind of iterations of it. So the first like 6 episodes were shot, had a totally different directive, and we were trying to kind of go away a little bit from the Netflix series, which was fine. It was just a completely different like feel for the show. And I think once everyone realized like, no, we need to really embrace what it was, because we're also all huge fans of the Netflix show as well. It was fun playing with those elements and trying to figure out like what we could bring in I know in episode 8, for example, Bullseye, when he has his kind of tooth attack moment, my assistant editor Ivan had this great idea of like, in the Netflix series there's these like bee drones that you hear whenever Bullseye is like having a moment. He's like, let's just see if we can like layer that in a little bit, so it's like we're kind of like building into what used to be there. So it was really fun kind of playing with those elements. And even in our temp score, we would kind of like, let's see what the Netflix series had and what stems, we had within the temp score there, just to see what we could kind of build out and what, I guess, tone we could reach, we could reach throughout.
Now, you mentioned episode 8, Isle of Joy. So
Mm-hmm.
the thing that really struck me about episode 8 is that we have this parallel editing going on of parallel stories. We have Poindexter, Matt and Heather's story, and Fisk and his wife Vanessa's story. But the episode is so incredibly congruent and smooth. Can you talk about how you built them? Because obviously we're conjoining, well, no spoilers, but we're conjoining these three and they're going to be in the same location by the end of the episode.
Yeah, I think that episode is maybe my one of my favorite episodes of TV I've ever cut. It was so much fun to work on, but also just having all of these people in the same room was just a really exciting thing. And so it was really just about like turning up that like weirdness of that moment, the Matt Fisk, the first time Matt and Fisk kind of see each other is such an important, or not see each other, but like Matt feels that Fisk is over there kind of making shady deals on the other side of the room. So it was really about like, how do we build this moment up? We also know that Matt is like unhinged at this point. So it's like, how do we just build up those elements? So that was really fun. And then the Vanessa Fisk and Matt Heather kind of argument at the top of the episode didn't used to be intercut the way that it is now, but it felt like there were so many different parallels between the two couples, and it was kind of like this final moment of like connecting both of their story arcs. And Vanessa, when she sees Adam, it's really kind of a like sad moment for her. It's like sad and sentimental, as messed up as that whole scenario is, and her shooting him at the end. But it was really like a matter of trying to play up what she was feeling in that moment. And this is like a really sad realization for her, where she's like, she really has to make that decision. And simultaneously Matt has to make his decision how he's going to handle this gala as well. So it was really a matter of finding like the vibe, I guess, to connect those two things, and also just like pacing both of those elements up, as much as we kind of want to live in the tragedy of the Vanessa story. um just
So
trying to find a way to make sure it's, because they're both tense moments. Just
um,
how do you play that up, but maintain kind of the weirdness as well.
the weirdness is a great way to put it. I adored that they were intercut like that. I went back and I watched it again because obviously I knew you edited the episode, but I just watched it again and I really enjoyed the tempo and the pacing of that. And then when the climax of the scene happens for Vanessa, without giving away too much, we just kind of held on that. And I didn't, and there was almost like a rack focus moment. And I didn't want to be there, but I was there, but I was happy that she chose Fisk. But at the same time, I felt gross about being happy about that. It was
Yeah,
a great
yeah,
piece
it's
of
like you
editing.
yeah, it's like you almost like you're there celebrating with them, but you don't feel like you should be. You're like, this is
Exactly.
weird.
Exactly. I'm like, oh, you're loyal to your oh no. It was fantastic. Matt, obviously, he's hearing impaired. Or not here, pardon me, he's visually impaired. And so you have to really kind of play with sound design because we have to know that Matt slash Daredevil has this like intense hearing that he can hear so very much. How did you shape what Matt was hearing versus kind of the rest of the world? Because he can kind of almost turn this on and off, but the rest of the world is still there a little bit. But in episode 8, he almost doesn't hear the rest of the world because he's so focused on what Fisk is doing. How did you kind of play with the sound design of that?
We did so much kind of back and forth just trying to figure out what that episode should feel like, at least in our temp temp sound pass, but um, I think the biggest thing for Matt is like he's kind of feeling like he's on an island in a way, right? Like this is his sort of final unhinged episode. And so, as for example, when he's going into the gala, when we first see Fisk, right, it's like the entire where like he needs to feel like it's just him and Fisk, right? So it just the sound would kind of dip down and you would just hear like the kind of reverbiness of it, and he's just in that moment. Similarly to when he's dancing with Heather at the gala, and suddenly the sound kind of drops out and you just hear Fisk talking directly to him. So it was really about just playing with those sound elements. We did build out a lot of kind of ambient noise throughout, but it felt like that, that was throughout all the episodes. I think just trying to build out as much ambient sound as we can, so that when Matt finally has these moments where he's having like his sensory moments, it's really clear that that's what's happening. And Benson and Moorhead, our directors, had this great idea of trying to create these like sensory grande moments, kind of where you see the aspect ratio will kind of shift, and he hears. It starts where he's hearing almost everything around him. So right before this is again spoilers, apologies, but right before the moment where he sees that or hears that Bullseye is there at the gala, he kind of hears everything around him, and then it kind of like slowly evolves into where he's hearing like less and less sounds until he hears the one kind of gun sound off to the side. So we played a lot with just what that would feel like, what those sensory beats would feel like throughout the season.
Yeah, he had a very, without giving away too many any spoilers, he had a very important choice at the end. And despite his rage, he made the correct choice after hearing all of that. And that kind of threw me for a little bit of a loop. I was like, well, you're being true to who Daredevil is, but that was super intense at the end during that sound motif and subsequent action. It was fantastic.
I love like the something also that I think Benson and Moorhead were really sensitive to was the Bullseye character as well. There's a scene earlier where he visits him in prison. And I can't remember Poindexter's exact line, where he says like that's what good men do, they defend their worst enemies, and Matt has this kind of like crisis of conscience, and you're also seeing Poindexter as like a real person and a really like layered individual. So it was really interesting kind of playing with that balance. And then obviously Matt does make the right choice at the end, but it's like at what cost, and after so much else has happened.
It was interesting to see Poindexter humanized in that way, because he was he did such a unthinkable thing in the first episode. And to kind of check back, I knew he was going to come back into the story, obviously, but kind of check back in with him and kind of see him humanized was really smart storytelling, I thought.
Oh, it was really fun to play with that. I think there's so many ways that scene could have been edited, but it was a really, I think, on Benson and Moorhead's idea of approaching it in that way was brilliant, because he is such a like just a nuanced character who's been through a lot. And so it was really interesting to kind of see him and Matt have that like strange connection in a way,
Yeah,
despite what's happened.
yes, for sure. You talked about the directors a couple times. Can you explain your workflow with the directors and the showrunner, especially given that they kind of overhauled the show after you had 6 episodes done?
Basically, our workflow, so usually I'll get dailies, when they're still shooting on set, and I'll work on those just to try to stay as caught up to camera as I can. Something that we would do is we would check in with Benson and Moorhead on their lunch breaks, sometimes just to show them our scenes, get feedback, and work on notes for those, just to stay on top of it. And then by the time they're done filming, they came and we would work on the director's cut for their episodes, which was a blast as well. But we had a couple weeks to kind of play around and make it feel the way that they wanted it to feel. After that, we showed it to our our showrunner Dario and our creatives, Sana and Brad, and then got their notes and just kind of, it's always a process of trying to find what the balance is because everyone obviously has a lot of ideas and just trying to see what sticks and what doesn't. Um, and it was really nice having Benson and Moorhead and Dario around for the, just kind of the overhaul of those first six because, they had created such a unique, distinct style, I think, for their specific episodes that it was really about going into those initial six and trying to find ways to kind of cut it to match. And try to make those moments match a little bit. Same with the sensory moments, like how do we turn these sensory beats into kind of like a cohesive thing that lasts throughout the season.
Mhm.
So it was a really it was just a really interesting collaborative process.
I'm always enamored by action sequence or stunt sequences. And can you talk a little bit about any challenges you faced in editing those stunt or action sequences?
Um, so there's a fight scene in the bank episode 5, where it's in like an alleyway and there used to be a parade behind it. There was like a St. Patrick's Day parade that happened in the background. And so I cut around that completely. That was like in an early iteration of it. And so it was like finding a way to make that fight work without seeing finding a way to make that fight work without seeing all of the parade happening in the background. So it was just obviously the show had a bunch of different iterations and just finding ways to make sure that the edit matched these different iterations. Um, so yeah, that one in particular is one that I always just think back to because it did change a lot. And then also just building out the leg break at the end of that fight sequence. There's so many so many versions of it. How many different ways can we, make it sound like this poor man's leg has been destroyed?
It always sounded like that.
Yeah, I had also just recovered from a broken ankle, so I felt especially like triggered by by that fight sequence, but I was like, I know what this should sound like. Let's do it.
Oh man, yeah, I don't know if I would have been able to edit that. Ooh. Oh, that's interesting. Now, let me ask about, obviously I didn't see the parade, but let me ask about the parade. Was that a decision that you made in collaboration with the creatives or the director or the showrunner? Or was that just something that you were trying and kind of stuck?
It was kind of in our, we had this pass once we were out of the kind of the OG round of episodes, and we had our new showrunner and had Benson and Moorhead with us. So we all kind of did passes on our episodes where we're like, let's see what we can let's just throw everything at the wall and see what will make it feel better. That was one in particular that I was like, the parade it didn't always make sense to me. And so I was like, I'm just going to try a version without it. And we had, luckily we had Philip Silvera, he's the stunt coordinator for the show, kind of watch through it with us, and we would just kind of talk through like ways to make these fight sequences feel tighter and stronger. And so we both kind of agreed on that in particular, where we're like, you know what, why we had it and it made sense at the time, but let's just see what we can do without this parade. And then the stairway fight in that episode as well, was all about like Matt just trying to be quiet in the stairwell. So just kind of brainstorming ways to make that feel like he was keeping it quiet.
Curious about creating high-quality YouTube videos? Enroll in video editing and production classes at Manhattan Edit Workshop to sharpen your skills and turn a hobby into a career. Start your journey to becoming a pro today.
That's fantastic that you were able to talk with the stunt coordinator. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's a great piece of collaboration for sure, because
Yeah.
I haven't been in any fights. I wouldn't know how to make that look believable. So
Yeah,
someone that
exactly.
actually has that ability, that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the cross-cutting before, and I'm a big fan of parallel editing or cross-cutting. But what I noticed is that even though you, and throughout the whole show, not just the episodes that you edited, but throughout the whole show, even though there was cross-cutting, emotional continuity like was there. Like I felt like it was incredibly, it flowed incredibly well. Can you talk about how you maintained emotional continuity through the cross-cutting?
Yeah, I think a lot of the scene, like our initially, for example, the episode 4, Fisk going to the dungeon and Matt going up to the tool shed were not intercut at all. It was just like a last, like 11th hour idea. But we're like, you know what? This is about connecting those two emotional beats. So it was really about trying to find the elements that mirrored one another. So you'll see Matt opens up the Billy Club's box, and then it immediately cuts to Fisk opening up his meal of like a bunch of sausages and pasta that he's not supposed to be eating, but it's like them coming back to their true nature. So it was about finding those little moments. And a lot of sort of pre-lapping and post-lapping of the sound as well. So the intercut that we talked about earlier in episode 8 with Matt, Heather, Fisk, and Vanessa, um, a lot of that is just kind of like pre-lapped and post-lapped to just feel like they're almost both having the same conversation, even though it's obviously not, but just trying to find those elements that mirrored one another. And we had a bunch of different, tries of it where we're like, let's test it this way and test it this way. But it was just about finding where the lines felt like they matched.
I have one more question for you,
Yeah.
Stephanie. What is your guilty pleasure film or television show? It can be something that you watch just to relax, or maybe when you're traveling, you always watch it, or something no matter if you see it, you'll just watch it. Do you have a guilty pleasure?
One is the movie Jeepers Creepers, and I cannot explain this to you. I don't know why. I don't know why, but no matter what, if it's on, I will just sit and watch it. Um, and my other one is Gossip Girl.
Now, imagine,
It's so over the top, and I just like love every moment of it.
I was going to say, imagine mashup between those two. Jeepers Gossip Girl.
Yeah. Look, that's a show I would watch.
I think you should pitch it. I think you should totally pitch it.
Definitely.
Well, thank you so much. That's it for this week. You can check us out at filmmakeru.com or follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_you. I'm Jamie Hitchings. Thanks for watching. And thank you so much, Stephanie Filo, ACE. Really appreciate your time.